Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar, Solid Edge Technical Publications, Increasing the Speed, Quality, and Accuracy of Product Documents. For an agenda, briefly we'll talk about the company I work for, Geometric Solutions, who we are, how can we help. Then we'll dive into our subject on Solid Edge Technical Publications, the secret to clearly created technical documentation. I think you're going to like this webinar. All of us have had bad instructions, whether it was a piece of furniture or how to put in a car part. Well, with Solid Edge Tech Pubs, you're going to get to see how you can easily create documentation that actually works. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the GoToWebinar dialog box. We also have a handout, so I want to encourage you to download it. My name is Dan Turk, and I'm an application engineer with Geometric Solutions. Geometric Solutions, we sell the best-in-class software. We sell Siemens software, but we're part of the larger Waltonen family of companies. At Waltonen Engineering, we have hundreds of designers and engineers. At Independence Tooling, we're able to create the things that those designers and engineers have designed. So you could say top to bottom, front to back, and every which way around, we've got you covered. Let's get started. Solid Edge Technical Publications, increasing the speed, quality, and accuracy of product documents. Before we get started, take a look at our screen. On the left, you can see one of the coolest vehicles that there are, a Jeep. The nice thing about a Jeep is that you can take off the doors, you can take off the roof, any way you want to drive, you can do it. The issue though is if you have a hardtop Jeep, it's not easy to pop the top off. In fact, it typically takes a couple of people and it takes them a while. But that's until we had this new product. Let's see what it is. Here you can see one person with just one push of a lever, and the top of that Jeep, it comes right off. So from top to topless, and it really just takes a little bit less than 2 minutes. Awesome product. Here's the issue though. A colleague of mine, they bought this product, and when they got the documentation, they had the printed manual that came right in the box. Online, you could go to their website and get a digital manual, or you could go and watch a digital video. Fantastic product, but the documentation was lacking. The printed manual, it didn't quite match up with the digital manual. And each one, it was just subtly different. But you can imagine if you were the one that was putting this together, how frustrating would it be? You've got this awesome product, but the documentation is just not helping. So what happened in this situation is common. A lot of times companies, they'll have this excellent product and they need to get it to the market as fast as possible. So the technical documentation, they'll start that maybe a little bit earlier than the product is ready, or they'll start it too late. But then there's changes during the late stage design or a change request made by manufacturing. And what does that give us? It gives us differences between the product and the documentation. This afternoon, we're going to look at the challenges faced when trying to create technical documentation. We'll look at the Solid Edge digitalization portfolio. We'll then see a demonstration of Solid Edge technical publications. We'll look at a ROI and then a customer case study. From a Siemens digital industry software perspective, our customers are harnessing the power of digital technologies and the digital twin to transform their businesses. The digital twin means to design and test your products in a virtual world on the screen and then correct any mistakes before the manufacturing process begins. The value of the digital twin lies in how closely the virtual world meets the physical world. And in today's competitive market, let's understand this. A true digital twin is not an option. It's not a luxury. No, it's a necessity. Manufacturers are recognizing that clear, accurate images of parts and products, it's the foundation of high quality downstream documentation. But here's the challenge. It needs to be extremely high quality, right? Everything has to match just so. Oh, by the way, you have to get it done very quickly. Unfortunately, quality and speed, a lot of times they are butting heads. They are competing with each other. Sometimes they're competing to the detriment of a company's reputation, even to their bottom line. And documentation, it's not relegated to just the design process. It's also necessary for manufacturing, installation, and maintenance procedures. In addition, the need for proper documentation for sales and for marketing and for the end customer to use. And these things are critical and essential, not just to the performance of the product, but also to the success of the actual business. There's good news though. The good news is that for most parts, most assemblies, we have these excellent 3D digital models. We've got all these CAD files. Here's the bad news. Converting these 3D CAD files into a technical documentation, it can be a painstaking process. And you can't just have an intern or a newbie do it. No, it takes expertise along with time. The task of converting files and then managing additional files for the documentation, usually it falls on the busy designer. So what does he do? Well, sometimes instead of converting the files, the designer, he'll just take like a screenshot of, of the part that he's working on. It'll have a specific orientation that they can use. And then maybe an illustrator will come in and then they'll recreate it. All of these projects, though, they're taking the designers away from their bread and butter, from their day-to-day work, designing new products. So to save precious engineering time, as an alternative to CAD models, some manufacturers, what they actually will do is they'll take photographs of a physical prototype. But think of what this means. How often is the physical prototype the same with no changes from what is going to be shipped? Also, it means it has to be manufactured first. While 3D models, they are an accurate source of product information, creating the documentation is often one of the last steps in the product development lifecycle because you want to make sure that the documentation it's going to be correct, that it's going to reflect the final design of the product. But since this is so time consuming, oftentimes you can have the product created in a box ready to ship if only for the documentation. As sometimes ready to ship products, they sit on the shelf waiting for documentation. This can frustrate the design team, and if it gets to a customer, it'll frustrate them. Getting to the market quickly, it can mean the difference between a competitive edge and lost revenue. And meeting customer milestones for product delivery can mean the difference between making a profit and falling short, even falling short to the point of having contractual fees. There's good news though, and that is that we have the ability to build publications and other documentation in tandem with design, in tandem at the same time. And here's the coolest thing about this. It's not just in tandem, it's also the fact that the design and the documentation, they stay linked, associatively linked. This means that Further down the design process, if there's a revision or if there's some big change, you don't have to worry. Illustrators won't have to take all their time recreating the documentation because everything is linked to that CAD model. Solid Edge is a key part of the Siemens Accelerator portfolio, and it's focused on the requirements of companies just like yours. Solid Edge enables manufacturers to create a comprehensive digital twin of their product, and it includes everything from mechanical design, electrical design, simulation, manufacturing, and what we're talking about today, technical publications. Solid Edge is really the on-ramp to your digital transformation. Solid Edge Technical Publications offers a wide array of various capabilities, from single-page illustrations to entire sets of documents, including interactive 3D views, text-based instructions, Excel-style charts. Solid Edge Tech Pubs allows customers to deliver customized documents, all while providing users options and flexibilities on how they wish to work. Now, over the next few minutes, we're going to show the many advantages of Solid Edge Technical Publications. We're going to start by showing the seamless flow of information from the CAD design and then right into Solid Edge Technical Publications. Now from there, we're going to show you the flexibility in taking that data and creating different types of documentation. So the type of documentation you want, we've got it. We're also going to demonstrate how changes made to the CAD data during late stage design or a change request for manufacturing, how they are automatically updated and reflected in the documentation. Remember, we said that it's going to be linked. We're going to show that. Lastly, we're going to show the end result of the final published documentation and the interaction that the end user has in consuming this information in an easy-to-read, interactive format. One of the main benefits of a documentation tool like Solid Edge Technical Publications is the visual display and interaction with the product within the documentation itself. This makes the information much easier to consume and understand because Solid Edge Tech Pubs automatically pulls features from the CAD information. Engineers, they don't have to take the time to convert files. And illustrators, they don't have to manually recreate that data, which could include metadata, exploded views, assembly configurations. The list goes on and on. This design information all flows seamlessly from Solid Edge to the Technical Publications tool. Let's take a look at this sewing and embroidery machine that was designed in Solid Edge. Now within the Solid Edge design application, you can have saved views or display configurations to make it easy for the designer to get what they need instantaneously. Maybe they want to see the main frame, but just that, and you want to see it right now. Or perhaps it's just one of the other brackets, or maybe it's the motor that you want to see. With these nice configurations, you can do that so quickly. Explosions are just as easy. It's just a matter of turning on that explosion configuration that's already been created. We mentioned earlier that the task of converting files and managing additional files that must be created for documentation purposes, it usually falls on the busy designer who created the original CAD files. Solid Edge Technical Publications can be launched right from within the CAD interface. You'll notice all the display configurations we just looked at in the design tool are available to access. In the case of this motor, you can see both the assembled and exploded states. Because Solid Edge Technical Publications is template-based, it's very easy to access predefined views or pages that contain the structure of what needs to be consumed. To make it easier for the consumer to see the composition of the motor, the illustrator may want to have a list of components as well as an easy way to quickly show the motor in both its assembled and exploded views. To do this, the illustrator can quickly capture an illustration of the current assembled motor. This illustration can easily be copied and then pointed to the exploded view display configuration. To enhance the connection between the 3D design and the list of components, a callout or balloon can also quickly be added. The balloon can call out standard item numbers that reference the parts list or bill of materials, or it can even extract out other relevant properties of the component, such as the part numbers, materials, descriptions, really any other property that you might want to see on a technical publication. Another benefit is the cross-highlighting between the list of components in the 3D design that allows the consumer of the documentation to cross-reference the 3D model to its associated number or any other property brought over from Solid Edge. And as you saw, to do it very easily. So we just saw how technical publications, it streamlines the flow of information into the technical publication tool from the CAD tool. So right from Solid Edge. And you have to admit, it was impressive. But let's run through a scenario where the documentation, it calls for instructions on how to repair or replace the motor. And then let's add this. Let's assume that the illustrator is not a Solid Edge CAD user, or that the information, it doesn't already exist. So in this example, we want to show you how easy it is for non-CAD personnel to utilize the CAD data, but then also have the flexibility to create documentation on the fly within the technical publications tool itself without having to rely on the busy CAD designer. And then being able to show appropriate configurations, appropriate views, everything they need to get across the critical information. To start, the illustrator will specify that they want to create a new custom view. In this case, we're going to call it disassembly. Now, just like in the CAD application, they can manipulate the views of the 3D design with specific zooms, pans, rotations, or as an alternate, they can select pre-configured common views. Now, to get to the motor, certain parts are going to have to be moved or disassembled in order to gain access. Here you can see by simply selecting the cover, it can be moved out of the way to replicate the real-world first step of getting to the motor. Each time a part is selected to be moved, that process is captured on the left-hand side of the screen in the exploded view tree. This process, it's going to be repeated a few more times for other parts until the operator can actually get to the motor. Now, each of the 7 steps in the disassembly process are captured, and now a storyboard. Basically, individual illustrations for each step can be automated through a storyboard wizard. Now that the storyboard has been created, the process can be simulated with on-screen navigation buttons built into the supplied template. In addition to having the process simulation with the 3D models, we might also want to include on-screen text instructions for even more clarity on what the operator needs to do for each step in the process. All of the details for each step can be captured with specific instructions, which auto-populates into the documentation. To revisit the benefit of reusing design information brought over from CAD, Now we'll show how part properties, such as part descriptions or document numbers, how it can easily be retrieved and displayed as the operator navigates through the different steps. Notice how the first step of removing the cover shows the highlighted cover's unique document number. As this process is simulated through the next steps, the document number automatically changes to reflect the appropriate highlighted part. Because you have to ensure documents accurately reflect the final design of the product, creating documentation has traditionally been one of the last steps in the product development lifecycle. However, with Solid Edge TechPubs, the ability to not only reference, but also keep associative the 3D design and the documentation means late stage design changes that are typically a pain, not any longer. Now it's not that big of a deal. In this example, a sheet metal bracket found within the motor assembly has been found to be insufficient for proper operation of the sewing and embroidery machine. Through the Solid Edge simulation application, it's been analyzed that by adding a couple of additional bends, the bracket will have the added stiffness needed to operate properly. The design change, it could be made on the fly in the context of the assembly. Or, as we're going to show here, we're going to presume that the modification to the sheet metal bracket, it's already been made. So we're just going to replace the part and swap out the old one for the new one. And that looks good. After the change has been made in Solid Edge, the illustrator simply goes back to the documentation and they just hit update. This ability to build illustrations and other documentation in tandem with design versus after the fact, and it keeps it associative, offers manufacturers several advantages. Illustrators, they have more time to detail their work because they don't need to worry about a design change stopping everything that they've done. This not only ensures that the documentation is correct and up to date, but it allows companies to get their products out the door faster and gain a competitive edge. Solid Edge technical publications give companies and customers another edge. You can build out and offer interactive visual web content and documents that users can easily manipulate and interrogate. Companies are no longer limited to delivering static documents like the old user manuals. The difference between reading about the steps needed to carry out a procedure and seeing those steps depicted in a graphical representation or animation, it makes a world of difference, not just for manufacturing, but also for service professionals and consumers. When, when technical documentation is accessible in the format and on the device that users need, it can be easily accessed to clarify instructions and procedures, helping to avoid mistakes. In addition to using the 3D design to create the documentation, there's also the ability to utilize or reference other documents as links within the current documentation. For example, the image seen here is a link to a video which shows the maintenance instructions on how to clean the sewing machine once the motor has been repaired or replaced. Now notice the different types of documentation that we can use. Of course, there's the print settings, so you can print a hard copy if you like. But then there's the easier settings that we have, PDF, HTML5, things that can be easily consumed on a computer, a tablet, or on a phone. If we go to the HTML5 version of the published motor replacement documentation, you can see how interactive the document really is. Just like in the tool itself, Simply clicking allows us to rotate or to interactively take a look at different parts. As we navigate to other pages within the document, the consumer can just click the next button to walk through the step-by-step instructions. In fact, with the 3D design, you're able to actually go in, zoom, pan, rotate, make sure that part is the right part that you're looking for, giving you a perspective that's not offered with standard printed documentation. The exploded and assembled views of the motor, they can also be toggled at will. And then we can click on links, a link to a video. Before taking a look at the ROI, let's first review all of the benefits of using Solid Edge technical publications. We'll look at this from a product development perspective, as well as the downstream benefits that customers will experience. The first one is less time. Less time for designers to spend answering questions from other departments. Less time for manufacturing engineers to create documentation. What about reduced errors? Because the documentation, it is associatively linked to the CAD design. And it's interactive. Consumers have more clarity because the documentation is dynamic. It's not just a static set of text or an image. Let's not forget the downstream benefits with overall customer satisfaction, with our products being delivered on time. Products are also installed, commissioned, and maintained more correctly and efficiently, resulting in lower operating costs. Let's now jump into the ROI, the return on investment. Now we're going to use a simple example. We're going to assume that designers spend 6 hours per week creating technical documentation, and they're using just the standard Microsoft Word where they're copying and pasting images, or maybe they've got a camera and they're taking photographs. We're going to say that for these 4 designers, that the loaded cost is $60 an hour. And yes, that's low, but we'll go with that. For the example here of those 4 designers, if we can automate the documentation process, you can typically save 80% of their time. That equates to a savings of about 19 hours a week for a team of 4. This would give us a huge labor savings of almost $55,000 per year. Even if you took this and reduced it to just 1 designer, the efficiencies gained, it would pay for the software in the course of a year. So you could say technical publications with Solid Edge, it's free after 1 year. Or if you've got a group of designers, it's really starting to make you money. There was a company, Solaris, and they had some trouble with their technical documentation. The big trouble that they had was their customers had a hard time finding spare parts. So just imagine, you're one of their customers, you need to buy some spare parts, you want to spend money, you can't find the parts. Well, this is where they went to Solid Edge Technical Publications. With this tool, they were able to create an interactive spare parts catalog. They were able to eliminate the need to print and mail catalogs, which saves them thousands of dollars each year. And that's not including the savings to the environment, right? It then became easier for their customers to find the spare parts that they needed. So sales were increased. So think of this example for Solaris. They reduce costs and they increase sales. It all adds up to increased profits. At this time, I'd like to thank everyone for attending. We certainly appreciate your time and your attention. You can see the QR code that we have. Scan that to learn more. Or You can email us at solutions@goplm.net. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day and be safe.